Welcome to the Stoic Today, YouTube, your daily source of timeless spiritual strength and unstoppable purpose. If you are tired of being ruled by emotions or dragged down by negativity, this video is your breakthrough moment. Please take a moment of your precious time and generosity to click the subscribe button, comment on the channel. Thank you very much. Listen to the next great content. Welcome to the Growth Mindset Club YouTube. Please take a moment of your precious time and generosity to click the subscribe button, comment. Thank you very much. Please listen to the next great content. Let's take a breath and be real, because if you're here, something cracked open in your life. Maybe it was trust, maybe it was your heart, maybe it was your sense of who you thought they were. Someone betrayed you, not just hurt you, but flipped your world upside down and left you wondering if any of it was real. You've questioned your worth, your instincts, your decisions. But what if I told you that betrayal wasn't the ending? What if it was the divine setup for something greater, something more healing, more purposeful, more holy than you ever imagined? Because while they were playing games with your heart, God wasn't watching from the sidelines. He was writing your comeback. A plan you couldn't see then, but you're about to see now. Because while the narcissist played games with your heart, God was busy writing a comeback. And today, I'm going to tell you the truth no one talks about. The truth you never knew about what happens after the betrayal. You ready? Let's get something straight. The betrayal you experienced wasn't the end of you. It was the beginning of something you didn't know you needed. And I know that sounds harsh. I know it stings. But sometimes the worst kind of pain is exactly what wakes us up. You didn't just get hurt, you got jolted awake. See, betrayal has a way of forcing us to see what we've been trying to ignore. The red flags we minimized, the truth we silenced, the boundaries we never set. You weren't blind, you were hopeful. You believed in someone who was never built to carry your heart. And that belief kept you trapped in a cycle that God knew you needed to break. Betrayal strips away illusions. It leaves nothing but the raw truth. It takes the mask off the narcissist, and it takes the mask off you. You get to see how much you were tolerating, how much you gave while begging for breadcrumbs in return. And while that realization hurts like hell, it's also holy because the moment you see it, really see it, you can't unsee it. You're awake now, and when you're awake, you can heal. You can grow. You can rise. You might feel like the betrayal broke you, but what it really did was break the silence around your pain, the silence around the parts of you that were shrinking to keep the peace. And that peace, it was fake. It was the kind of peace that cost you your voice, your joy, your identity. God didn't want you living like that. Surviving in a prison built by manipulation and control. So when the betrayal happened, as devastating as it was, it became the crack in the facade. The moment where the light started breaking in, you didn't lose yourself in that moment. You found yourself. Because in the middle of the chaos and confusion, there was something else. Clarity. Maybe for the first time, you realized you had no control over their actions, but you had every bit of control over your response. Maybe for the first time, you saw that your healing wasn't going to come from an apology or from closure, or from finally getting them to understand. Your healing was going to come from you and from God. That betrayal was not your end, it was your awakening. You stopped making excuses for someone who never deserved your loyalty. You stopped trying to fix what you didn't break. And slowly, painfully, but powerfully, you started coming back home to yourself. You began seeing that the real issue wasn't that you loved too hard, it was that you forgot to love yourself
just as fiercely. And now you remember God allowed the betrayal to break what needed breaking. The attachment, the illusion, the cycle. And in its place He's planting something new, something stronger, something sacred. But first, you had to be shaken because nothing changes in comfort. And the life He's calling you to live, it's too powerful, too purposeful, too important to be spent under the control of someone who feeds off your insecurity. So no, this isn't the end. It's the wake-up call that brings you back to life. You didn't get abandoned. You got redirected. And maybe it didn't feel like that in the moment. Maybe it felt like your world collapsed, like everything you trusted suddenly turned into a lie. But let's pull back the curtain here. What if God wasn't punishing you? What if He was protecting you from something you didn't have the strength to walk away from on your own? Sometimes the door doesn't close gently. Sometimes God slams it shut because he knows you won't. When a narcissist is removed from your life, it feels like loss, but it's really deliverance in disguise. You thought the relationship was a safe space, but God saw it for what it really was, a trap that was draining your spirit and silencing your purpose. And when you kept giving chances, hoping they'd change, hoping love would finally be enough, God stepped in. Not because he wanted you to hurt, but because he knew you wouldn't step into your calling if you kept trying to fix someone who was never meant to come with you. You see, we pray for peace, but then get angry when God removes the chaos. We ask for clarity, but get confused when he takes away what was clouding our judgment. But God doesn't owe you a comfortable path. He's offering you a true one. And that means there are going to be moments when he redirects you in ways that don't feel fair. Moments where the pain feels bigger than the promise. But the thing about divine redirection is that it rarely comes with explanations. It comes with faith. It seems like you don't always get to understand it in real time. You have to walk through it, trust through it, and heal through it before you see what he was doing behind the scenes. That narcissist wasn't just toxic. They were a distraction. And distractions don't just waste your time, they delay your destiny. You were too focused on keeping the relationship alive to realize you were slowly dying inside. And God couldn't stand by and watch you settle for a counterfeit version of love. So he removed it. Not because he's cruel, because he's committed to your growth, your purpose, your freedom. And listen, redirection doesn't feel good. It feels like rejection. It feels like failure. It feels like abandonment. But it's not. Rejection is often God's loudest no, not to your dreams, but to your destruction. He's saying, I'm not letting you waste another year watering a dead tree. I'm not letting you stay small when I created you for impact. I'm not letting you keep giving yourself away to someone who doesn't even recognize your value. That's not punishment, that's love on a higher level. You may not have chosen the betrayal, but you get to choose what happens next. You get to decide if you're going to keep staring at the closed door, or if you're going to start looking for the one God's opening next. The redirection only works if you move with it. So, stop begging to go back to what broke you. Stop praying for restoration in places God has already called dead. You don't need to rebuild the ruins. You need to walk toward resurrection. This isn't about revenge. It's about release. Because when God redirects, he's not just removing, he's replacing. And what's ahead of you is always greater than what you lost. But you'll never see it if you keep reaching for what's behind you. So trust the shift, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because that pain, it's the turning point. And it's carrying you straight into something you were born for. You spent so much time trying to be enough for someone who was never capable of seeing your worth. Not because you weren't worthy, but because they were never looking for something real to begin with. Narcissists aren't in relationships to love. They're in them to feed, to control, to mirror back their own image. So no matter what you gave, how deeply you loved, or how long you stayed, it was never going to be enough. Not because you were lacking, but because they were empty. You have to understand this. Your worth has never been and will never be based on how someone else treats you. Especially not someone who's emotionally broken and spiritually bankrupt. But here's the trap so many people fall into after betrayal. They start questioning themselves. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? If only I had done more. And that right there, that spiral, is the real damage narcissists cause. They don't just walk away with your trust. They leave you doubting your value. But let me remind you, you didn't deserve it. You didn't invite it. And their betrayal wasn't a reflection of your flaws. It was a reflection of their character. Narcissists betray because they feel entitled to. Because they don't value connection. They value control. And once they feel like they've lost control of you, they sabotage the relationship. Not because something's wrong with you, but because something is broken in them. They couldn't handle your light. They couldn't deal with your depths. They weren't equipped to meet you at the level of love you offered. So instead of rising up to meet you, they tore you down. That's not love. That's manipulation. That's not partnership. That's exploitation. And the moment you stop tying your worth to their inability to love is the moment you finally break free. Look, We live in a world that teaches us to prove ourselves, perform, please, shrink to fit, be low maintenance. But you were never made to be small. You were made with divine intention, with power, with purpose. And no narcissist, no matter how charming, no matter how convincing, has the authority to define that. They saw your kindness as weakness. They mistook your forgiveness for foolishness. But let me tell you, the fact that you loved in the face of betrayal doesn't make you weak. It makes you rare. The real work now is untangling your value from their validation. Because as long as you believe your worth was something they had the right, the cess, you'll keep reliving the pain. You'll keep wondering why they moved on so easily, why they never apologized, why they never saw what they had. But the truth is, people who are disconnected from their own worth will never recognize yours. And you were never supposed to find your identity in their approval. You are not broken because they left. You are not unlovable because they couldn't love you. You are not disposable because they treated you like an option. Their inability to love was never your responsibility to fix. Your responsibility now is to reclaim who you are without their voice in your head. You're not the version of yourself they convinced you to become. Insecure, anxious, always questioning. You're stronger than that. You're wiser now. And you're starting to see that your worth is constant. No matter who stayed, who left, or who betrayed, healing means you stop asking why they didn't value you and start asking why you stayed in a place where you weren't valued. Not from a place of blame, but from a place of power. That's when the shift happens. That's when you stop begging for scraps and start sitting at the table God prepared for you. A table where you don't have to earn your seat. You don't have to compete for attention. You don't have to beg to be chosen because the truth is you were chosen from the beginning. And you don't have to keep proving that to anyone who can't see it. What they couldn't recognize, someone else will celebrate. What they discarded, God is about to elevate. But before that happens, you've got to come home to yourself. You've got to stop letting someone else's inability to love become your inner narrative. You are enough. You always were. And it's time to stop questioning that. Pain isn't just something you survive. It's something that transforms you. And I know when you're in it, that sounds like nonsense. When your heart's been shattered, when trust has been violated, when everything you thought was solid crumbles in front of you, the last thing you want to hear is that there is purpose in your suffering. But it's true, because pain is the one thing that forces you to face what comfort would let you ignore. It drags everything to the surface. The unhealed wounds, the buried insecurities, the quiet compromises you made just to keep the peace. Pain doesn't lie. It reveals. And that's why it's powerful, because in the aftermath of betrayal, especially from a narcissist, you're left standing in front of the mirror with no one else to blame and no one else to hide behind. Next, when you meet yourself in that version of you, she's not weak, she's not broken, she's becoming. You start seeing the patterns. You start realizing how long you've been molding yourself to be palatable, lovable, safe. You see where you gave too much, tolerated too much, trusted too quickly, not because you were stupid, but because you were pure-hearted. That pain is not punishment. It's the pivot point. It's the place where the old version of you breaks so that the real one can rise. See, everyone wants growth, but no one wants the breaking that comes before it. Everyone wants purpose, but no one wants to go through the fire that shapes it. You don't get to clarity without chaos. You don't get to strength without struggle. And that's why pain is the portal. Because if you let it, it won't just scar you. It will shape you. It will teach you boundaries. It will sharpen your intuition. It will toughen your voice. And it will strip away every lie you were told about who you had to be to deserve love. You don't become powerful by accident. You become powerful when you stop running from your story and start owning it. You become powerful when you realize that the pit you were thrown into wasn't your grave. It was the foundation for something unshakable. You build from that place. You rise from that place. You stop apologizing for your standards. You stop begging to be chosen. You stop settling for emotional crumbs when you were made for more. God doesn't waste pain. He uses it. He uses it to pull you out of situations you would have stayed stuck in. He uses it to wake you up to how small you've been living. He uses it to call you into alignment with your real purpose. Because here's the truth. You were never meant to live your life revolving around someone else's dysfunction. You were meant to live anchored in your worth, aligned with your calling and unapologetic about what you bring to the table. Pain is what cracks your heart open so the real healing can begin. Not the kind of healing that just helps you cope, but the kind that changes your identity, the kind that wakes you up, the kind that makes you unshakable. Because once you've been through that kind of fire and come out the other side, you don't play small anymore. You don't explain your value. You don't chase love. You attract it because you become it. That's the gift pain gives you if you're brave enough to walk through it instead of avoiding it. The narcissist was a lesson, not your forever, not your soulmate, not your life sentence. And the moment you start treating that experience as a chapter instead of the whole book, everything starts to shift. See, narcissists come into your life like storms. They shake everything, tear down your peace, and leave a trail of emotional wreckage behind. But storms don't last. They pass. And what's left after the storm? Clarity, truth, a cleared out space where something better can finally grow. But let's be honest, when you were in it, you didn't see it as a lesson. You saw it as love. You believed in the potential. You held on to the good moments. You excused the manipulation, justified the gaslighting, explained away the lies, all because you were hoping that who they were pretending to be at the beginning was the real version. That's how narcissistic cycles work. They hook you with charm and chemistry and false promises, and then little by little they start breaking you down. Not in ways that are always obvious, but in subtle soul-eroding ways. And when it finally falls apart, when the mask comes off and the betrayal hits, you're left feeling like you failed, like you weren't strong enough to stop it. But let me tell you something loud and clear. You didn't fail. You learned, and some lessons are brutal, but necessary. You learned what manipulation looks like up close. You learned what it feels like to overextend yourself in the name of love. You learned how dangerous it is to ignore your gut just to avoid being alone. That's not weakness. That's awakening. So now, the challenge is this. Don't turn that pain into your identity. Don't make their dysfunction the lens through which you see your future. The narcissist was a chapter, not the entire story. And if you keep replaying it, if you keep retelling it like it's the final word on your worth, then you're giving them way more power than they ever deserved. Lessons are meant to be learned, not lived in forever. You've got to stop romanticizing what was actually toxic. Just because you had moments of connection doesn't mean it was real. Just because there were laughs and memories doesn't mean it was healthy. Narcissists give just enough to keep you hooked, not enough to actually build with. It was manipulation dressed up as intimacy. And now that you see it, you don't need to hate them. You need to outgrow them. That's the real victory. Not revenge, not getting an apology, not proving your worth. The victory is healing so completely that the narcissist no longer defines how you see yourself or how you love moving forward. You rise, you rebuild, you recalibrate, and you become the version of yourself that would never tolerate what you once accepted. That's growth, that's power, that's redemption. You're not here to carry their baggage. You're not here to keep unpacking their damage inside your own spirit. You're here to heal it, seal it, and move on. And when you do, you make space something real. For people who see you, for relationships that don't drain you, for love that doesn't come with emotional whiplash. But first, you've got to stop letting the narcissist live raunchy in your mind and spirit. The lesson was never about them. It was about you. Reclaiming your strength, your standards, your voice. They were the wake-up call. You were the answer. You're not broken because of them. You're becoming because of it. The narcissist may have taken your time, your trust, and a piece of your peace, but they did not take your future. And what's coming next, what God has lined up for you, is not only restoration, it's redemption. But here's the catch. It's not going to come through bitterness. It's not going to show up while you're replaying old conversations or checking their social media. It's going to come when you decide to shift your focus forward. Because restoration isn't just about getting back what you lost. It's about receiving what you were always meant to have. Once you finally let go of what was blocking it, you got to understand something deep in your bones. Just because they broke you doesn't mean you stay broken. That betrayal didn't cancel God's plan for your life. It activated it. The enemy tried to use that relationship to destroy your spirit. But God is using it to rebuild you into someone unshakable. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who doesn't tolerate emotional crumbs. Someone who refuses to dim her light just to keep someone else comfortable. That kind of restoration, it's spiritual. And it begins when you stop tying your healing to someone else's behavior, because they're not coming back to fix it. They're not going to admit the full damage they caused. They're not going to wake up one day with a healed conscience. You don't need that to heal. You need truth. And the truth is, God already saw what they did. He saw the manipulation behind closed doors. He heard the things you cried about that no one else knew. And He's not turning a blind eye. He's preparing something greater. But it requires your alignment, not your resentment. You can't step into restoration if your heart is still locked in revenge. You can't receive what's next while clinging to what should have been. Yes, it was unfair. Yes, they were deceitful. Yes, it hurt like hell. But carrying that anger like armor will only weigh you down. Bitterness doesn't protect you. It poisons you. It keeps you in a state of spiritual paralysis, reliving a chapter that God is trying to close. This is where the hard choice comes in. Not the easy one, not the one where you wait around for karma to show up. The hard one where you decide that you're not giving one more ounce of energy to someone who was never meant to stay. You release not for them, for you. Because
That's divine restoration, but it doesn't come to the version of you who stays stuck. It comes to the version of you who dares to rise anyway, who dares to believe that joy is still possible, that love is still real, that peace is still yours. Not after the narcissist apologizes, but now. You didn't go through all of this just to survive. You went through it to become more grounded, to become more discerning, to become more aligned with your purpose and your creator. The pain wasn't wasted. It was woven into the process of refining you. You may have walked through the fire, but you didn't burn. You forged something unbreakable. And the version of you that's emerging now, she's not fragile. She's not bitter. She's clear. She knows what she deserves. She knows what she'll never tolerate again. She knows that if something costs her peace, it's too expensive. So don't let the betrayal be the end of your story. Let it be the turning point. Let it be the proof that even when people try to break you, God builds something stronger from the rubble. Restoration is already in motion, not because of who they are, but because of who you're becoming. You don't need closure from them when you've got calling from God. And what's ahead of you? It's more beautiful than what you lost because it was meant for. Thank you for listening to the entire video content. We hope you take some of your precious time to click subscribe, like, and comment on Stoic Today channel. Sincerely, and thank you very much. Invite you to listen to the video with the next great content.